Welcome back to Keto and Crime. Today I am reviewing the 3-part Discovery Plus docuseries Jared from Subway, Catching a Monster. This originally hit Discovery Plus, Discovery Network, in March of 2023. And it is now being given kind of a repush on the Max app, which used to be HBO Max. There's been so many mergers, I can't keep up. But you can get this 3-part docuseries on Max, on Vudu for purchase, and you can also watch it on Amazon Prime, free if you're a Prime member. I think you can rent it if you're not. So that's what I'm going over today. Docuseries appear to be the new thing when it comes to true crime. You know, we used to have documentaries, which were 90-minute to 2.5-hour documentaries, and now they're just taking those same documentaries and splitting it into 3 parts, 4 parts, calling it a docuseries and just uploading it. I don't understand, but it's 3 45-minute-ish episodes, which, you know, equal about a 2-hour, 15-minute experience, 2.5-hour experience. So I don't understand why that format is so much more popular now, because people binge watch when they watch, and so they'll watch several episodes in a row. So why can't you just sit and watch a whole documentary? Anyway, that's an argument that I need to have in my own brain at sometimes. But anyway, let's talk about it, shall we? Overall, the docuseries focuses on a little bit on the life, but mainly on the crimes and associated crimes of Jared Fogle. And if you want me to do an in-depth video on Jared's life, I don't know if I can do it any better than Stephanie Harlow. I can't do anything as good as Stephanie Harlow. I'll link hers right up here. But if you want me to do one, I'm happy to do one in my own style. A lot of you seem to like my style. I appreciate that. So if you want me to do that, just let me know down below. But I'll just give you a brief overview. He was born August 23rd, 1977 in Indiana. He had a pretty unremarkable childhood, upper middle class, but he had a weight problem. He tended to eat away his feelings. I can understand that. He then got famous after losing 245 pounds during his time at Indiana State University. It was first noted in a April 1999 edition of the Indiana Daily Student, who noted what Jared had done. He did this by eating at Subway twice a day and doing a lot of walking. He had gotten up to a super plump 425 pounds, and over the course of about a year, he managed to get that off by eating a 6-inch turkey with apples and a diet soda for lunch, and then a foot-long Veggie Delight and a diet soda for dinner. That was his diet. And he also had a few bags of baked potato chips. Was eating roughly about 2,000 calories a day. He just did it by purchasing it all at Subway. And then from then on out, his life has been Subway. He has been their spokesman. He has appeared in documentaries like Super Size Me. He was even in 2 of the Sharknadoes. He's a well-known person, and you associate him as Jarrett from Subway. Very few people even know his last name, Fogle. It's Jarrett from Subway. So he was kind of hailed as a weight loss hero, and was, you know, has been interviewed and documented. His life has been Subway since he graduated from college. He worked briefly in finance for a small airline, but after that, he's been Subway. He has become a millionaire working for Subway. He also founded the Jared Foundation in 2004, which was a nonprofit focused on getting kids to move. You know, and he also been on The Biggest Loser. I mean, he just, his whole life was helping to battle childhood obesity. a noble endeavor. But however, we know that really, really quickly things went dark. He is now more well known for accusations of child abuse, and I won't say what type of abuse because this is YouTube, unfortunately. Along with him and the director of the Jared Foundation, Russell Taylor, are both now sitting in prison, as well as Russell Taylor's wife, for the abuse of children. And that's all I'll say on that. Now, let's get into the actual docuseries. Again, 3 parts. You can watch it in one evening. I did. It basically focuses on a Tampa area radio host and journalist, TV journalist, anchor by the name of Rochelle Herman. Evidently, she caught the eye of Jarrett when she interviewed him on her radio show for local radio, and he seemed to like her and in a romantic way, and they began talking, and according to her, that's when he first let loose about his desires. We'll just put it that way.
The story you are about to hear sounds crazy, but I can promise you it is all true. As a journalist, I came to know Jared Fogle better than anyone.
According to her, this is all according to her, and she does have some documentation to back this up, she ended up working undercover for the FBI to help expose him. And she goes into very poignant stories about her interactions with him, about how he wanted her to do things like film her children while they were undressing, just a lot of really creepy stuff. I'm not saying she was lying. I think she is telling the truth, but the way this documentary comes off, it seems to be about 60% about Rochelle, about 20% about Jared, and then about 20% about the Russell Taylor family. So it all ties in, but I think if we honed in less on her experiences with Jared and just on what happened with Jared, I think the documentary would have been a lot more interesting. I'll just say that. Not that it was a bad documentary, but you know how I've often said that documentaries and docuseries fall into 2 types. One where you just turn on the camera and you let it roll and whatever unfolds with no opinion. Or there's one that has an agenda and opinion, and the documentary is cut and edited to focus on that opinion. This is definitely the second. This is definitely more about Rochelle and her experiences with Jarrett rather than just the whole Jarrett story, though they do a very good job of explaining what happened. To me, the most interesting part of the documentary was the stuff about the Taylor family. You had Russell Taylor's 2 stepdaughters that underwent abuse that you wouldn't believe at the hands of their stepfather and their mother, who probably had these tendencies before she met Russell. She would have had to get into all the stuff that she got into, but these 2 were raised in a home where they were encouraged to be nude, to be sexually explicit, to do things like smoke and experience marijuana as young minors. And then also they were being filmed. Every part of their daily life was filmed, right down to doing the private stuff you do in your bedroom when you're going through puberty. I'll just put it that way.
There were cameras all throughout the house.
And they didn't find this out until after their stepfather and later their mother was arrested. The stuff these girls went through is just absolutely a travesty. And to me, the time they spend on that is the most interesting part of this documentary. And then after that, the stuff about Jarrett and Russell Taylor. And then finally, last but not least, the stuff with Rochelle Herman is the least interesting to me. I know this woman went through a lot, Rochelle. I know she went through a lot. She suffered a lot having to be undercover for the FBI. I know she felt her life was in danger, and it probably was. But I think if they had focused more on what she found out rather than how she found it out and her feelings about finding it out, if that makes sense, it would have been a lot better. And if you look over on Rotten Tomatoes, most of the viewers feel that same way. I got that. I try to be fair when I watch these things, but That's the feeling that I got. Now, if you're wondering who's Russell Taylor, he was the head of the 𝗟𝗻𝗃 Foundation. And he was the first one to be busted for large amounts of CP, and that's initials for YouTube. In 2015, he was arrested at his Indianapolis home. Later on, his wife was arrested for being an accomplice. He attempted suicide in the Marion County Jail and was placed on life support for a while. He did eventually plead guilty and was sentenced to 27 years in federal prison because of the amount. Like, here's the son, the actual son. Here is the amount of CP that was found on his computer. Just think of it that way. Some of the, up until the Duggars, I think this was probably one of the most egregious collections of that stuff that ever. Then we also find out the 𝗟𝗻𝗃 Foundation itself is nothing but a big Ponzi scheme. Most of it was, very little was done to promote childhood wellness. Most of it went to paying Russell Taylor's salary and paying for shenanigans that they did while flying around the world in countries like Thailand. I'll leave it at that. And so once Russell Taylor was arrested, the floodgates kind of opened on Jared Fogle, and eventually, he was arrested as well. Even though, according to records in the Tampa, Sarasota, Florida area, they had been investigating Jared since 2007 with the help of Rochelle Herman. And I do think the FBI used and abused her, I'll be the first to say, but again, I think there was too much emphasis on that and not enough on what they were actually investigating. But with Russell Taylor's arrest in 2015, they were finally able to arrest Jared and then kind of pile that stuff on top. In August 2015, federal prosecutors cut a plea deal with Fogle in which he pled guilty to 2 counts, one of distribution and receipt of CP, and one to traveling across state lines to engage with activities with a underage girl. To pay $1.4 million in restitution, up to $100,000 to each victim, and was sentenced to 12.5 years in prison, or no more than 12.5 years prison, and was eventually sentenced to 5 years. Of course, Subway officially cut all ties, and Jared is a shadow of his former self. Like I said, if you would like me to do a more in-depth video on him, I will. So that's the whole story. But like I said, I think the docu-series itself, I would give it overall a B+. I think a lot of the information they presented about Jared and Taylor were very interesting. It's a lot of stuff I didn't know, and the stuff focusing on the Taylor's stepdaughters were very, very good. I think that was the best part and the most meaningful part for me. The stuff with Rochelle, I could take or leave it, even though I do feel sorry for her. I'm not saying that stuff should have been presented, but maybe instead of 60% her and 40% everything else, it should have been more like, 20% to everybody, if that makes sense. But overall, if you're interested in the story of Jared Fogle, I definitely recommend giving this docu-series a try. It's a typical Discovery Channel documentary. Think the original documentaries on the Duggars. As far as being well done and well paced, it is. I just think they focused on the wrong thing. And with that being said, I would recommend it, especially if you're interested in this. And if you'd like me to do a more in-depth video on Taylor and Fogle, I will be happy to. Just drop that down below. And until next time, 𝗙𝗑𝗀 and 𝗀𝗏.